Grace and peace to you, Christ Community family. I pray that all of you are healthy and well as we come together on the second week of January for our Wednesday's Word, our midweek devotionals, as we continue our journey through the Heidelberg Catechism. If you missed last week's intro video and last week's video on our devotional video on Lord's Day 1, I encourage you to look back and review on our YouTube channel. For this week, we have come to Lord's Day 2, so I invite you to listen along as I read this for us. Question and answer 3. How do you come to know your misery? Answer. The law of God tells me. Question and answer 4. What does God's law require of us? Answer. Christ teaches us this in summary in Matthew 22:37 through 40. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Question and answer 5. Can you live up to this perfectly? No. I have a natural tendency to hate God and my neighbor. Now, like I mentioned in our introduction, it's fascinating to see a teaching document, an instructional document that was created in defense and offense of the gospel, of the faith, be starting off with sin. It starts off with misery. It doesn't start off with instructions or guidelines. It starts off with sin. Now, if you look back into the Old Testament, from Deuteronomy 6 all the way to the New Testament in Matthew 22, the ultimate call that we have to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and soul has stayed the same. But can we really love the Lord our God with our heart, mind, and soul? With all our heart, mind, and soul? We can't. We fall short. We're always going to fall short. We're never going to be perfect. We're never and should never have full satisfaction in where we are in our relationship with Christ. And why is that? That's because of sin. We've come to a time where we have so many people that have tried to normalize sin. We have come to a time where there's so many people that focus too much on, well, God's going to forgive me, and they try to downplay sin. But in all honesty, you cannot downplay sin. You can't brush off the weight of sin. You see, us falling short and feeling the weight of guilt of that sin needs to happen in order for us to experience grace. Sin is not good. Sin is bad. Sin divides and pulls us away from God. You can't sugarcoat that. But if you don't understand that, if you don't acknowledge that, if you don't feel that weight of guilt, then we won't understand the weight of God's grace. Church, emphasizing guilt does not mean we need to live in guilt and shame. Emphasizing guilt does not mean it will hinder you from coming to Christ. Emphasizing guilt means that it helps us to begin that journey to Christ of grace and redemption. Church, we should never be satisfied with where we are in our relationship with Christ. We should never be satisfied and say, oh, I'm good in my relationship with Christ. You see, our relationship with Christ should always be filled with hunger to know Him more. You see, us falling short, because Romans 3 teaches us that we will fall short of the glory of God. Us falling short is us experiencing the misery of sin. And when we experience the misery of sin, that should lead us to hunger and thirst for Jesus that much more. So as you go about this week, and as you remember this teaching, as you remember this sin, this misery, and as you feel that weight of guilt and shame of that sin, don't dwell in that sin, but let that be an opportunity to begin that journey of redemption and God's grace. Have a blessed week, church. Love you all, but God loves you more.